I'm Owen Covington, Director of the Elon University News Bureau. I'm here with Adam Aiken, Assistant Professor of Finance in the Love School of Business. We're here to talk about some recently published research that Professor Aiken has had a hand in. And in that research, you looked at how a politician's political ideology may correlate with how they invest their money. Can you talk a little bit about how this project came about?
Sure. We started the project thinking about the kind of existing literature on how ideology affects and relates to all sorts of different decisions made within finance. Could be at the corporate level, could be at the investor level. And a lot of that literature uses campaign contributions to denote, are you a Democrat, are you Republican, are you liberal, are you conservative? But there are some problems with using contributions as a measure. For one, you see a dollar amount that someone gives, but that doesn't necessarily denote how intense they feel about their ideology. You could give $10 to a campaign and be very conservative or very liberal, give a lot more and not feel that way. But so we look at members of Congress where you have a much cleaner measure of ideology, and you can look at their voting record and say, this person's very conservative, this person's very liberal, and then we can relate that to their portfolio choices because those need to be disclosed from all members of Congress.
That's great. So you have a metric to judge where they stand on the spectrum of political ideology, as well as some data that you drew from as far as looking at companies from a social responsibility standpoint, and that sort of gave you the data to look at as far as where those companies might range in that respect. So what sort of correlations did you find?
That's right. So in the existing literature, we support that. We find that, yes, more liberal members of Congress, they do end up investing in what you might call more socially responsible firms and industries, less so on the more conservative side. But what we were able to do with our measure, because it's what you would call continuous, we have this very liberal, moderately conservative, more conservative. We find that moderate members, whether moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, they tend to invest in a similar manner. And the action, so to speak, is really out there on the tails, where more liberal members, they invest in a socially responsible way. And more conservative members, they invest in a way that's more consistent with their ideology.
And I think I've seen you all frame this as politicians are actually putting their money where their mouth is.
That's right. So it could be that politicians say they support the environment, but then go out and invest in oil companies or something like that. And we find that it's actually the case that if you're a more liberal member and you support environmental causes, then you tend not to invest in certain industries and certain firms. And if you're a more conservative member of Congress and you maybe are more pro-business or something like that, then you support firms, invest in firms that are more consistent with your ideology.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me.